So this week I was playing some video games that I picked up on the Steam summer sale, and I was actually playing through the newest Grid game, and I was struggling at this one point to kind of progress in the career mode, and it kind of hit me. Being a video game reviewer must be an absolutely terrible job these days. Now, that's a fairly big logical jump, but hear me out. I think I can make the connection. Video game reviewers today must be under immense pressure to get their reviews out. And I'm talking about primarily people who still write for the major outlets, whether it's IGN, GameStop, but also some of the bigger online reviewers. You have to kind of beat that street date. And ideally, you have to beat your competition whenever the NDA says that you can post your review. You want to be the first to market. And that timeliness is your advantage. It is your currency, or one of your main currencies. So if I had to review that game, Grid, and I had to play through the whole career mode, and I was constantly struggling at this one race, I would have been in trouble. And that idea made me think, gosh, video games are a hobby for me, but if I was constantly playing under the pressure of deadlines, it would be an absolutely torturous experience. And that pressure isn't just the deadline, to get the review out, but there's always the pressure of the process itself, evaluating the offline mode and the online mode. What if you're assigned a game that's 80 hours long and a tedious slog like some of these JRPGs can be? Again, in my case, it was difficulty. What if you are assigned a game and you just don't have the skill to get through that game? Think of difficult games like Dark Souls. I believe Cuphead was really difficult. I never played it, but I heard reviewers were struggling with it. And then maybe you have to evaluate games with incredibly predatory and complex microeconomies. All of that while getting that review out as soon as the NDA ends. I think another reason why the job is probably incredibly stressful and soul-destroying is that you're always caught in this tension between coming up with an entertaining, insightful, and reasonable evaluation of a game, but also keeping the publishers happy. And you're probably always walking on eggshells. You're not exactly sure what you can say, what you should say. I'm sure, again, a lot of unwritten rules there. You kind of have to read the politics around your review. And if you screw up, and you lose access, that's another one of the main currencies that reviewers work with. If you lose access, you probably lose your job, or you jeopardize your outlet, as a business, because if you get cut off from a couple major publishers, that might be it. I think also another pressure, and again, I don't really read GameStop and IGN, like I did when I was a teenager in my early 20s, back when it seemed legitimate, even though it probably wasn't back then. But, you got to produce video content. You got to have a social media presence. And I'm sure maintaining that online personality is stressful to a degree. At least it seems that way from where I'm sitting. I'm sure these people have to deal with kind of, analytical tracking of their review performance. How many clicks did you get? Things like that. That's stressful in all jobs, but I'm sure just because, again, the tenuousness of the position of the reviewer makes that all the more stressful. And that tenuousness is due in large part because I think the very career of video game reviewer has been greatly devalued on so many levels. Again, you have publishers dangling access in front of you for positive coverage, or at least to incorporate their spin into what you're writing. You have informal online outlets like Twitch, or maybe the overly positive YouTube reviewer, people who get the same access that you do, but don't hold themselves perhaps to the same standards as your outlet. And then because of this kind of negative economy that surrounds the act of reviewing a video game, and the relationship between publishers and the video game news outlets, the public doesn't trust the video game reviewer. I think by and large, a lot of people now, they may read a review just to see what somebody has to say, but they don't trust it as an objective source of information. And if you feel your role at work, if you feel your very career is being devalued, it's incredibly depressing. And that takes us kind of to the last point, and that is career growth. What is the career trajectory for somebody who is writing video game reviews for Polygon, Kotaku, IGN, and so forth? Seems to me that there's not a lot of avenues into quote-unquote serious journalism. A few people have made it, most recently that guy Jason Schreier, who I think is now with either Bloomberg or Forbes. So some people have made it, but not too many. And I guess the question is, if you're a video game reviewer in your, let's say, mid-20s and you could continue doing this into your early 30s, where do you go from there? If you're not going to go into serious journalism, well, I guess you can work for the video game publishers themselves, either in their PR department, maybe doing quality testing. If you have some programming ability, maybe you can go in as a programmer, maybe you can go in as a writer of game narratives. But as we've learned recently, those aren't great places to work. Those are really predatory working environments. So it's kind of a bleak picture, and I'm doing this video not to kind of point fingers and laugh at video game reviewers and say, oh, look at them, their lives are terrible. It's actually because, it's kind of interesting to think that what I do to unwind is actually an incredibly high-stakes game for certain people and could produce, that stress, that torturous agony, that daily job grind. So, it's a tough gig, and again, I empathize with video game reviewers.